John stood on the porch, his eyes clouded by age, gazing at the neglected garden behind the suburban house where he had lived for 4 decades. The white fence was now stained. The old oak trees stood bare in the spring breeze, and the garden once, his wife Mary's pride, had become a tangled mess of weeds and withered flowers. Mary had passed away 5 years ago, leaving John with an emptiness that could not be filled. At 72, he was a retired man whose days drifted by in silence, without purpose. But today, as the sunlight filtered through the leaves, a small spark ignited within him a desire to live again, if only once more. With trembling hands, John picked up the old shovel and began. He pulled weeds, turned the soil, and planted the first seeds. Vibrant red tulips, Mary's favorite, soft velvet roses, and pure white daisies. Each shovel stroke was a whisper to himself that life, even in its twilight, could still bloom. His knees ached, his back grew weary, but he did not stop. There was something about this work, the scent of damp earth, the feel of tiny seeds between his fingers that awakened a part of him that had long been dormant. Weeks passed, and the garden began to transform. Tulip sprouts emerged, reaching for the sun, and soon the backyard became a canvas of vibrant colors. John spent hours each day there, knees caked with dirt, sweat trickling down his forehead. He watered, pruned, and whispered to the flowers as if they were old friends. Some mornings, he sat on the wooden bench where he and Mary used to watch the sunset, a cold cup of coffee in hand, smiling as he watched the petals sway in the breeze. One day, while watering, John noticed something. He saw the tulips in full bloom, their petals wide open as if embracing the world. And then, as summer arrived, they began to fade. Petals fell, stems withered back into the earth. Yet, even in their decay, he saw a strange beauty, a serenity in how they accepted their end. They did not resist nature's course. They surrendered to it. John sat down on the wooden bench, his gaze distant. He thought about himself. His body was no longer what it once was, his steps slower, wrinkles etched deep into his face, strength fading. Some days, he felt like those flowers, wilting, losing the glow of youth. But looking at the garden, he suddenly understood. Life, like the garden, had its seasons. John remembered his spring, those youthful days full of vitality, when he and Mary were newlyweds, building their home together. He recalled summer, when he worked tirelessly to provide for his family, when their children were young and scampered around the house. Now, he was in autumn, the season of slowing down, of inevitable changes. And winter, he knew, was approaching. But instead of fear, he smiled. Autumn had its own beauty, the golden leaves, the crisp air, the stillness for reflection. Winter, though cold, brought rest, peace. John thought of his memories with Mary, the picnics by the lake, the road trips, the evenings spent hand in hand on the porch. Those moments, like the flowers, had bloomed and faded, but their fragrance lingered in his heart. As autumn arrived, the garden changed once more. The last flowers dropped their petals, and John prepared for winter. He pruned branches, mulched the soil, letting the garden rest. He was not sad, for he knew spring would come again, and the garden would bloom once more, perhaps not the same, but still beautiful in its own way. One afternoon, while working, John felt a sharp pain in his chest. He paused, took a deep breath, and the pain subsided. But it was a warning that his time was running out. He sat down, watching the leaves fall, and thought about death. He was not afraid. He had lived a full life filled with love, joy, and sorrow. And through the garden, he had learned the greatest lesson, that accepting change was not giving up, but finding peace. In his final days, John spent more time in the garden. He sat on the wooden bench, listening to the wind rustle through the bare branches, and smiled. He saw his life not as a series of losses, but as a perfect circle like the garden, always continuing, always changing. When his last breath left him, John closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw the garden, the vibrant red tulips, the regal roses, the gentle daisies. He saw spring returning, and in that cycle, he found comfort. He passed away, but the garden remained. A reminder that life, though fragile, always finds a way to bloom.
After John's passing, his children continued to care for the garden. Though busy, they came to weed, plant, and tend to it as a way to keep him close. Each time they stepped into the garden, they felt him in every petal, every blade of grass, in the quiet it offered. The garden was not just soil and flowers. 'Twas John's story, the lesson he left behind, that life is a series of seasons, and when we embrace them, we find meaning.
If this story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales about life's journey.